before I begin, I need to ask you for one thing. If one day you feel like someone is watching you, don't rush to convince yourself it's just your imagination. Sometimes the feeling comes before the understanding. In the last part, there was a voice. There was a symbol. There were legends. But today will be different. Because sometimes the most frightening thing is not what cannot be explained, but what can. Let's continue. After Lisa disappeared, the house felt tense. Not mystical, not cold, too real. Moira stopped talking about time loops. She spread everything across the table. Archive records, ownership documents, old reports, pages from the first owner's diary. We need to understand who benefits from the legend, she said. Who gains something if I start being afraid? Aiden nodded. They began with the ownership history. The house had belonged to Aiden's grandmother for nearly 20 years. And then it was sold suddenly. No listing, no explanation. But there was one strange detail in the paperwork. A month before the sale, the house underwent an unscheduled condition assessment. The requester, unknown, no signature. I didn't know about this, Aiden said quietly. Were you living here then? Moira asked. Yes, and that month, something changed. In what way? Aiden hesitated. Grandma started taking phone calls in private, locking herself in her study. Then she changed the locks. He looked up. And one evening, a woman came. Moira stilled. Did you see her? Only her outline. Calm, confident. They talked for a long time. A pause. Then I heard a scream. Silence. It wasn't a scream of pain, he added. It sounded like someone realizing they had been deceived. The room felt heavier. What happened after that? Moira asked quietly. A few days later, an ambulance came. No commotion, no details. And then Grandma said the house had to be sold. Immediately. Moira glanced at the archive entry. Emergency medical response. No diagnosis listed. No comments. And the date matched the diary entry. If she finds out, she won't stop. Do you think that woman knew about something valuable? Moira asked. Aiden nodded slowly. Grandma always said the house had history, but she never told the whole story. Moira thought for a moment. If your grandmother sold the house right after that meeting, then she realized the danger was real, Aiden finished quietly. Silence stretched between them. For the first time, this no longer felt like a legend. It felt like someone trying to hide something very specific. And if Lisa had returned now, then this story wasn't over. We need to find out who that woman was, Moira said. Aiden nodded. And in that moment, one thing became clear. Someone had tried to get into this house before, and possibly more than once. That night, they didn't leave. Moira stayed in the house. Aiden stayed with her. Documents lay spread across the table. The diary, archive records, and one question that kept growing heavier. Who was that woman? The next morning, Aiden went back to the archives. He wasn't looking for the house's history anymore. He was looking for medical records. In the emergency report, there was only one word: trauma. No details. But there was something else. The emergency call hadn't been made by the homeowner. It was made by a third party. The name was partially redacted, but in the paper copy, the first letter was still visible. L. Aidan felt a cold weight settle inside him. Meanwhile, Moira was reviewing the financial records. The house had been sold below market value, far below. And yet, 3 months after the sale, a large private transfer was deposited into Aidan's grandmother's account. No sender listed. "It looks like compensation," Moira said. "Or a deal," Aidan replied quietly. They lined up the dates: the meeting with the woman, the ambulance call, the house assessment, the sale, the money transfer. The sequence was too clean, too deliberate. Then an email arrived in Moira's inbox. No message, only attachments. Old photographs. In one of them, Aidan's grandmother, standing beside a woman, a clear face. Aidan froze. He didn't just recognize her, he remembered her. "I've seen her before," he said quietly. Moira looked up. "Where?" "In Lisa's house, years ago." A pause. "Lisa once asked me to fix some wiring. I was doing small repair jobs back then." He swallowed. There was a framed photo in her living room. She said it was her mother. Silence. "Are you sure?" "Completely." He stared at the image. "That's the same woman who came to my grandmother's house." The room felt smaller. "So her mother was here," Moira said softly. "And everything changed after that meeting," Aidan replied. They looked again at the date of the ambulance call and at the diary entry. "If she finds out, she won't stop." "If her mother didn't get what she came for," Moira said slowly, "then Lisa came back to finish it." Aidan nodded. But one question remained. If this was only about money, why create a legend? Why the symbol? Why the voice? And just then, Aidan's phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number. The past was not meant to be found. Aidan lifted his eyes to Moira. "This is more than treasure." Moira answered quietly. "This is someone trying to bury an old mistake. And maybe someone is afraid that the truth is more dangerous than any legend." Moira and Aidan were sitting at the table. Old papers, dates, fragments of memory. Who was my grandmother arguing with? Why did she leave so suddenly? What really happened that night? The questions kept growing. And then something interrupted them. A dull crack. Part of the wall near the ventilation grate gave way. Plaster crumbled to the floor. Dust filled the air. And with it, a sharp, metallic smell. Aidan froze. "Do you feel that?" Moira didn't answer. The room tilted slightly. Her vision blurred the edges. Not fear, a physical reaction. They stepped outside almost at the same time. Cold air cleared their heads within minutes, and that's when they understood. This wasn't a legend. That night, Moira didn't go back inside. She stayed at Aiden's place. The next morning, they called professionals. Not mystics, not paranormal investigators. A structural and environmental inspection team. They needed to know, was the house unsafe? And why had they felt that way? The report came back 2 days later. In older layers of plaster, chemical compounds were detected. Substances that, in enclosed spaces over time, can cause disorientation, perceptual distortion, a sensation of repetition, auditory misinterpretation. Not lethal, but strong enough to make someone question reality. Aiden lowered the report slowly. My grandmother said she could hear the house. I thought it was just age. They went through the boxes of his grandmother's old files and found something important. Lisa's mother had done renovation work in the house. But that wasn't all. Archived records showed she had studied chemistry. The pieces began to align. Lisa's mother knew about the grandmother's wealth. Stocks, bonds, jewelry, gold. She couldn't simply steal them. So she chose something slower. Subtle influence. Adding compounds to construction mixtures. Layer by layer. Renovation after renovation. The air changed gradually. Aiden's grandmother began experiencing anxiety, distorted perception, a sense that time was repeating, and that's when she drew the symbol. 3 lines and a circle. But it wasn't mystical. It was a map. 3 lines. First floor, second floor, basement. The circle. A large, round canvas covering part of the basement wall. Behind it, a hidden compartment. When the grandmother realized Lisa's mother wasn't who she pretended to be, she confronted her. The argument was intense. That night, under the influence of the altered air, the grandmother believed she was trapped in a time loop. But it wasn't time. It was exposure. Before leaving the house, she made one final move. In the basement, inside a wall cavity, she used the same cement mixture that had already been altered, sealed the hidden compartment, and covered everything with a large circular canvas. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The following night, Lisa's mother broke into the house. She knew the valuables were still inside. She went to the basement and stayed there too long, breathing the same air. When she came back up the stairs, she lost her balance. Officially, an accident. The case was closed. Lisa grew up knowing only part of the story. She understood chemistry. And when Moira bought the house, Lisa decided to finish what her mother had started. Find the hidden compartment, take the jewelry, and if necessary, recreate the conditions. The symbol, the smell, the messages, the sound at 3:14. But there was one detail. The basement. Aiden remembered. My grandmother always told me to seal it. Never let anyone reopen it. The basement had been closed for years, And that was where everything mattered. When the ventilation was dismantled and part of the masonry removed, Moira and Aidan found it. Behind the circular canvas, the family jewelry, untouched. Lisa disappeared shortly after. Within a week, it became clear she had left the country. Quickly, without explanation. The house was cleared. The basement sealed permanently. The story reconstructed. Moira and Aidan grew closer, and eventually they began living together. But the most unsettling part of this story isn't the house or the symbol. It's how easily greed and knowledge can create a legend, and how long a legend can survive after the people who created it are gone. The house is quiet now. The walls are clean. The air is clear. The basement is sealed for good. No more symbols. No more voices at 3:14. But sometimes, late at night, Moira still pauses. Not because she hears something, but because she remembers how easily fear can be manufactured. How easily a legend can be built, brick by brick. And how close she came to believing it. Dear friends, write in the comments what you think about this story. Was Lisa truly the villain? Or was she just finishing something that started long before her? If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. Your opinion matters to me. And ahead of us are many more detective, gripping, and slightly mysterious stories. See you very soon.